A video game is a coordination of electronic codes that has an interface for human interaction on a video device. In fact, the first video game ever launched was not 1972 AD launched Pong, but a patent was filed in December 14, 1948 in New Jersey, United States for a missile game or a missile launching game based on radar displays from World War II. And at the time it was named cathode ray tube amusement device. Okay, cathode ray tube just means that fat TVs back in the time, those are named as cathode ray tube, and amusement device is just the device that will amuse you. But this project was not disclosed for commercial usage because of capitalism, not that, but also because of its like too large size or 2-3 rooms big size, and its cost, which ranges up to $100,000. Fast forward to today, we have 2D, 3D, action adventure, RPG, simulation, strategy, sports, puzzle, etc, etc, etc types of games, and are used as dopamine kickers, reality escapers to get a dopamine kick, and money generators, aka professional gamers. But still with the end goal of stimulation of tuberoinfundibular dopamine neurons located in dorsomedial hypothalamic arcuate nucleus in hypothalamus, just to get a dopamine kick. And yes, I am flexing my 3 years of medical school, 8 months of residency. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Krishna, but you can call me Krish, and today we will debunk pros and cons of video games from the lens of a medical science and based upon last 3 decades of blood and sweat of our lovely researchers. Let's start. Okay, before I start spitting facts about pros and cons of gaming, we should know, or we should be familiar with the word or with the term called cognitive bias. Now, it is defined as a systemic thought process caused by tendency of human brain to simplify information processing through a filter of personal experience and preferences. Okay, in simple words, we only like to hear positive things about a person, thing, or perspective that we like or firmly believe in. For example, if you have an Apple phone, then you will only hear or seek positive information about it that confirms the buying or the decision of buying an Apple phone was a good and a right decision for you. Basically, this is what cognitive bias is, and vice versa. Now, why am I telling you this, the principle of cognitive bias? Because the exact same thing can be applied in this topic as well. For example, if you are the person who firmly believes in negative signs or negative symptoms of video gaming, then you are here only to hear about the negative things of the video games. Hence, you are feeding your cognitive bias, and vice versa as well. So I need you guys to keep the bias aside and embrace or like perceive all the information in this video by an open mind or through an open mind. Okay, on that note, there are 2 types of consequences of video gaming. One is physiological and second one is psychological. Okay, in physiological, there is computer eye syndrome, which is just a bunch of symptoms of related to eyes and headaches stuffed together, and another is bad posture, immobility, sedentary lifestyle, social isolation, and things like that. But this is not necessarily because of gaming, but also it can be also applied to a desk job or the job which requires a long time or long exposure of computer screens in front of you. Now, physiological effects are the superficial effects that we can see and perceive, but the major supposed concern here is psychological effects of video gaming. So there are 2 major researches done in that, or done in psychological or negative psychological effects of gaming on brain. Okay, number 1, the study done in Tohoku University suggests that those children who play games several hours a day can suggest problem with a development of frontal lobe of the brain. Now, frontal lobe is the most important part of the brain because it controls your movements, your cognitive functions, your intelligence, your voluntary controls, and most importantly, your emotions. Now, keep the word emotions in your mind because this is quite important word for this research. Okay, so another, or the number 2 study was done in Michigan State in 2009 by Dr. Reen Weaver and his colleagues on the topic of how aggression impact of video games affects our brain. In this experiment, they asked 13 experienced gamers to intentionally play violent games that involved killings and violence and stuff like that while undergoing fMRI. fMRI is just functional magnetic resonance imaging, which is a brain scan or scan of a brain. Now in the results, they found before firing a weapon a greater activity in a certain part of a brain which is called dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, and while firing and shortly after firing they found lesser activities in another two parts of the brain, and those are rostral anterior cingulate cortex and amygdala. Now these are the major parts of the brain which controls or which have a significant effect on your emotional conflict. Basically they can control your emotions or emotional response. And this article states, or the conclusion of this article states, their decreased functioning could indicate, now in there, which means that rostral anterior cingulate cortex and amygdala's decreased functioning could indicate a suppression of emotional response to witnessing the results of taking a violent action. Now for a long time there has been a big myth around us known as video games causes violence or video games makes you violent. No, that is not true. What is true though, it will suppress your emotional response toward witnessing a certain violent actions, and that's it. That is it. And if it is getting like too heavy, so don't mind, just listen. I'll revise all the points in the simple words at the end also. And on that point, let's move towards pros or benefits or positive psychological effects of video games. Now there are near negligible positive physiological effects of gaming, except of these thumb biceps. Rather, in positive psychological effects of gaming, we'll discuss about 4 articles. Number 1. Okay, so around 2009, a study was done with 8 men playing war games which involved destroying tanks and stuff, while going positron emission tomography, which is just another fancy scan of the brain. This study showed that the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is involved in learning and feelings of reward, was released as the men progressed through the game, showing that the stress hormone and release of dopamine were not only during the moments of violence and harm, but in the motivation and learning moments as well. So the conclusion was it can help, or the gaming can help with learning abilities and motivation in real life situations as well. Number 2, or the another article titled Neural Basis of Video Gaming, a systematic review, was done by Mark Paulus and his fellow friends in 2013. An interesting set of evidence from this particular article states, by studying lifelong experts of professional gamers, some studies have detected structural gray matter changes that correlated with improved executive performance involving posterior parietal and prefrontal regions, which in simple words means greater and improved performance of the parts of the brain which controls cognitive flexibility, prospective memory, and a better control of decision making. Number 3, another study showed a large size of hippocampus in the gamer's brain, which resulted in increased efficiency of visuospatial skills. Now, visuospatial skills includes drawing, making a bed, constructing models, and things that are creative or requires creative ability to acquire. Okay, our last article is about children's growth or children's brain growth, and this article is titled as Child Development or Video Games and Child Development. What does the research say? And the whole conclusion of this one study was, educational games can help preschoolers learn coding, literacy, and math skills. And there are other games called exergames, which involves exercise and gaming at the same time, and that will help children with their physical health. There are many games that involves creativity to solve, so that can help with the brain functioning or brain development of children as well. And all these studies combined, they can help with the children's brain functioning and overall development of the brain as well. Now a quick revise. Harmful effects: physiological, computerized syndrome, posture, immobility, sedentary lifestyle. Psychological: in the kids who play several hours a day daily, there might be a less development of frontal lobe. In adults who play violent games, their emotional response toward witnessing results of violent action may get suppressed. Now in the positive effects, no positive physiological effects, but in psychological, increased motivation and learning abilities, increased creativity or visuospatial skills. In children, education and the health related games can improve overall brain function and the physiological health as well. The full article is down below in the description. Watch more videos over here. Bye.